because of my childhood experience, it was almost like a gift. The whole situation of me being born early and being in an incubator, and I couldn't even hear early on, that had a big impact on how I perceive sound. Because when you can't hear, you have to develop other senses and different levels. And so for me, I had to develop sight at an early age on a different level than if I was able to hear. Because I would have to literally hear sounds with my eyes because I couldn't hear and because I couldn't hear, I really couldn't talk that well. So when we talk about like mental projection and talking to animals or talking to plants, all that had to be developed on a certain kind of level because I couldn't hear. And I didn't think about that while as a child, but now when I think about it now, I understand the significance of all those things. That was all the gift. Most people would say like, wow, that childhood experience was horrible, but I look at it like, wait a minute. Through all of that, I was really given a gift and different gifts that have allowed me to see things in a certain kind of way. So I pay honor and respect to that. So part of me and information, how I attain information, has to do with what is encoded in my DNA, in my blood, and so forth, and in my body itself. But there's something else that I want to share with people like right now, and this is something I've only shared with like maybe 2 people, and I just told my wife like maybe about a year ago. I perceive sound differently than most people. As a musician, we're trained to do that anyway, but sound in and of itself has information encoded in it. That's to say that if I take the flute and I play one note, I can transmit in my mind love through that one note. And it's just one note. And people will feel, wait a minute, there's love there. If you're receptive, you feel. I can also play the same note and project fear. And people will hear the same exact note, but they'll also perceive that fear as well. So sound in and of itself has information encoded in it, and it's a vibration that impacts people in different ways. From early childhood, and people can just open your hearts to this as a possibility, because I know it may seem, it may even be strange to some people. From an early childhood, I would get this, there would be a tone, and in musical terms it's called A440. It's, let's see. Okay, it's that tone, and from an early childhood, I would hear this tone, and I never understand where it would come from. Just come out of the blue. I might be playing with some toys, and I hear this tone, and I'll just go about my business, and it would stop. Later on in life, the same thing. You hear this tone, and then it would stop. Sometimes it'd be long, sometimes it'd be short. Like I said before, sound has information encoded in it. Right? Every single sound, even my voice is really just sound, but there's information encoded inside what I'm saying, right? So a single tone has information encoded in it, and I'll explain to people why that's significant. So for a long time, I never understood like what that was about. Like it didn't make any sense to me. Like all of a sudden you hear a tone, like what's going on? Later on in life, I realized something. That tone was basically my uplink to information that exists in the universe for free. Because it's already there. It's just we don't hear it all the time, or we don't see it all the time, or we don't feel it all the time. But from a child, that tone would come, and I just didn't understand what it was about. However, the tone, the information that's inside the tone is all encoded. It's not like a direct translation. It's not like, okay, here's Oro Egamunde. It's not like that at all. And this is a story of Oro Egamunde. No, that's not how it works. It's still just a tone, but inside that tone is encoded all these different stories. Like my wife was telling you how I've written all these different stories. Encoded in this tone is all of the different information that I talk about in my films that I didn't find inside a book, or I didn't hear someone say it. That's why it's a little bit different. It's a direct link. It's like an uplink to the universal consciousness, if you will. However, what I found is the only way to decode the encoded message, for me personally, is to live a certain kind of lifestyle. That's the key. The encoded information can never be, what's the word for it? It can never be translated by me unless I adhere to a certain kind of lifestyle. So when we talk about, the kinds of responsibilities that I took as a child, when we talk about not smoking or not drinking, when we talk about just having reverence and respect for women and for animals, and like for instance, I don't step on ants. And what's interesting is throughout that, like when I started to understand life and all its different manifestations, and how we have to really be careful with all the different manifestations of life and not injure life, just period. Once I understood that, I became more perceptive about things. And an example of this is like I can be walking, outside, and I'll know that there's an ant down there. without even looking. I know that there's an ant. And I know that if I take another step, I'm going to step on the ant. Well, the ant has a family. The ant is going to have, it has children, or any other animal for that matter. Every once in a while we will have a roach in the house. It's a roach. Most people are like, what? We got to go kill all these. No. I'll go get a piece of toilet paper. I'll pick the roach up, side toilet paper. I'll say, excuse me, and apologize for the imposition. I'll take him outside. I put him outside. Because ultimately that roach has a family. If it's a male, it has a wife. If it's a male, it has children. If it's a female, it can create life. So there again is a manifestation of the feminine principle. Why would I step on that? Right? Once I began to think like that, then I could perceive life on a different kind of level. And by perceiving life on a different kind of level, all of that encoded information began to unravel. And it began to unravel. And I was privy to information that you can't find in a book, or you can't source. You can't say, here's my source for this. It's information that was encoded in a tone that reaches into the universal consciousness in and of itself. So from a child hearing that tone and then now understanding how it plays itself out, there's times where I hear the tone and it's short. And when it's short, I just say to myself, okay, it's just a small amount of information. When it's long, I say to myself, okay, there's a lot of information here. And as that information is decoded, that's where I get the inspiration for my films. That's where I get the information for my flute solos. That's where I get the inspiration for my films, per se. It's about all that encoded information inside these tones that I hear. And these tones are directly connected to the cosmic consciousness. So I wanted to share that with people because a lot of people have said, well, where do you get your information from and what are your sources? Well, how can I answer that? I can't say I got it from a book because I didn't. It has a lot to do with my spiritual obligations here on earth and different gifts that I've been blessed with and how those gifts and perceptions manifest in my life in a certain kind of way to where I have to live a certain kind of way in order to access the information. It's like someone giving you a book, but you can't read it unless you live a certain kind of lifestyle. So that's why I'm very careful with how I live, how I treat people, in particular, how I function as a man and as a father. And I should also add this, that if I lived a life that was not respectable, then the decoding of this information wouldn't take place, because it's an agreement. It's an agreement it's something that I agreed to prior to manifesting in this realm. That ultimately, in order to have access to this information and being able to decode it, you have to live a certain kind of way. You have to treat people a certain kind of way, and you have to have a certain kind of reverence and respect for life. And that's why I'm always very careful with how I say things to people, what I say. I don't argue with people. I don't fuss. I don't fight. I try not to injure people or injure animals, because ultimately I want to know all of the information that's in the universe, but I can't do that unless I live a certain kind of lifestyle, and hopefully I can get as much of the decoded information as I can before I leave the body.
Wow. Well, okay.